You know what they don't tell you about working in space? Everything still needs to be cleaned. And guess who gets that honor? That's right, the humans. Because apparently when you're the newest species to join the Galactic Federation, you automatically qualify for the exciting career path of maintenance species. My name is Jake Martinez, and I'm what you might call a professional mess cleaner-upper on the Galactic Research Station Prometheus. Sounds fancy, right? Wrong. I'm basically a janitor with a really long commute. Every morning I wake up in my glorified broom closet, grab my mop, and prepare to clean up after beings who think they're too evolved to figure out how trash cans work. The station is run by Commander Vel'tar, a 7-foot-tall reptilian who looks like someone crossed a crocodile with a really bad attitude. He's got this charming habit of referring to humans as the help and speaking about us in third person, even when we're standing right there. Real classy guy. The human will sanitize Laboratory 7, he announced this morning, not even looking at me. The human will ensure no contamination remains. I wanted to say, the human has a name, scales for brains, but I also wanted to keep my job. So instead I just nodded and grabbed my cleaning supplies. Because that's what we do. We nod, we clean, and we pretend we don't notice when they treat us like particularly useful furniture. The worst part? The scientists here actually are brilliant. Dr. Quinella, for instance, is this blue-skinned, four-armed genius who's been working on some kind of consciousness research for the past decade. She's got these big, compound eyes that seem to see everything at once, and she's always muttering equations under her breath while she works. I'd probably find her fascinating if she didn't have this annoying habit of leaving her experiments scattered all over the lab like a particularly dangerous Easter egg hunt. Then there's Zeph, her nervous little assistant. He's about 3 feet tall, covered in what looks like purple fur, and jumps at his own shadow. The guy apologizes for breathing too loudly. He's actually pretty decent to me, which automatically makes him my favorite alien on this floating metal can. Sorry, Zeph squeaked as I walked into the lab this morning. I know you need to clean, but Dr. Quinella said not to touch anything on table 7. Very important experiment. Very dangerous. Very, very sorry. No worries, buddy, I said, patting his fuzzy head. I'll work around it. And that's how I spent my morning, mopping floors and wiping down surfaces while carefully avoiding the mysterious glowing vials that seemed to be Dr. Quinella's latest obsession. The woman had been working on this project for months now, and whatever it was, it had everyone on edge. Even Commander Vel'tar had stopped by twice this week to check on her progress. I was just finishing up the last counter when I heard the familiar sound of Dr. Quinella's voice echoing down the corridor. She was arguing with someone about funding budgets and something called Project Mindbridge. I didn't pay much attention. In my experience, when scientists start talking about their work, it's usually best to just keep your head down and focus on not accidentally destroying something that costs more than your planet's GDP. But as I was putting away my cleaning supplies, I couldn't help but notice that table 7 was looking particularly interesting today. Whatever Dr. Quinella was working on, it was definitely the most visually appealing experiment I'd seen in months. The vials were practically glowing, casting these weird, shifting colors across the lab walls. And one of them was just sitting there, completely unattended, looking almost like it was waiting for someone to notice it. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not stupid. I know you don't just grab random glowing liquids in a science lab and chug them like they're sports drinks. I've seen enough horror movies to know that's how you end up as either a superhero or a pile of goo, and the odds aren't exactly in your favor. But here's the thing about working third shift on a space station: you get really, really tired. And when you're tired, your decision-making skills tend to go straight out the airlock. I was staring at this particular vial, which was glowing with this soft, almost hypnotic blue light. It was sitting right there on the edge of table 7, and I swear it looked exactly like those energy drinks they sell in the station's commissary. You know, the ones that promise to boost your cognitive function and enhance your natural abilities. Same color, same glow, same slightly ominous warning labels that nobody ever reads. Speaking of warning labels, this thing had them in spades. I counted at least 17 different alien languages plastered all over the container. But here's the problem with being part of the maintenance species. Nobody bothers to teach you how to read the important stuff. I could identify cleaning supplies in 43 different languages, but ask me to translate danger, the experimental psychic enhancement serum, and I'd be about as useful as a chocolate teapot. So there I was, dead on my feet after a 12-hour shift, staring at what I was absolutely convinced was just some fancy alien energy drink that Dr. Quinella had probably ordered from the commissary and forgotten about. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to leave it alone, but the tired part was louder. And the tired part was really, really curious about what alien energy drinks tasted like. I picked up the vial. It was warm to the touch, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't your average beverage. But no, tired Jake thought that was just a fancy feature. Ooh, self-heating, I muttered. These aliens really have thought of everything. I unscrewed the cap, and the liquid inside seemed to pulse with its own light. It smelled like, honestly, I can't even describe it. Imagine if starlight had a scent, and then mix it with the faintest hint of ozone and something that might have been vanilla. It was weird, but not unpleasant. And that's when I made the decision that would either save the galaxy or get me fired. Probably both. I tilted the vial back and drank the whole thing in one go. It tasted like electricity in dreams, if that makes any sense. Which it doesn't, but that's the best way I can describe it. The liquid went down smooth, almost like it was dissolving into my bloodstream before it even hit my stomach. There was this weird tingling sensation that started in my throat and then spread outward, like someone was running a very gentle electric current through my nervous system. For a moment, nothing happened. I stood there, waiting for some kind of reaction, wondering if I'd just consumed the galaxy's most expensive placebo. Maybe it was just fancy alien water with food coloring. Maybe I'd gotten worked up over nothing. And then Dr. Quinella walked in. "Jake," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "please tell me you did not just drink what I think you drank." I held up the empty vial and gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile, just grabbing a quick energy drink. "Don't worry, I'll replace it." The sound that came out of Dr. Quinella's throat was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It was part shriek, part wail, and part something that might have been crying. All four of her arms started gesticulating wildly, and her compound eyes seemed to be vibrating with barely contained panic. "That's my blood," she shrieked, pointing at the empty vial with two of her hands while the other two clutched at her head. 20 years of research. Psychic enhancement serum derived from the rarest telepathic species in the galaxy. And you just... She couldn't finish the sentence. She just stood there, staring at me like I'd just told her I'd used her life's work as salad dressing. That's when the tingling sensation got stronger, a lot stronger. And the lab started to look different. The walls seemed more transparent, like I could see through them to the corridors beyond. The equipment was humming with energy that I could actually see now, little streams of light connecting everything together. "Oh," I said, as the full scope of what I'd just done began to dawn on me. "Oh, this is bad, isn't it?" Dr. Quinella's response was to sink into her chair and start muttering what I assumed were very creative alien curse words. And that's when things got really weird. You know that moment in movies when the main character suddenly realizes they've made a terrible mistake? Usually it's accompanied by dramatic music and a slow zoom on their horrified face. Well, real life doesn't have a soundtrack, but it does have the sound of a brilliant alien scientist having what can only be described as a complete mental breakdown. 20 years, Dr. Quinella kept repeating, rocking back and forth in her chair. 20 years of research, and the human drinks it like it's a beverage. I wanted to point out that technically it was a beverage since I'd just consumed it, but something told me that now wasn't the time for semantics. Especially since the walls were becoming increasingly transparent, and I was starting to see things that definitely weren't supposed to be visible. Like the fact that the research station we were on had an awful lot of weapons for a place supposedly dedicated to peaceful scientific inquiry. "Dr. Quinella," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, as I watched what looked like a massive cannon battery rotate into position outside the lab window. "I'm seeing some things that are making me a little nervous." She looked up at me with all four eyes, her expression shifting from grief to concern. What kind of things? Well, for starters, I can see through walls now, which is weird but not necessarily bad. The bad part is what I'm seeing through them. I gestured toward the far wall, where I could clearly make out the outline of what appeared to be a massive hangar bay filled with military vessels. Want to explain why a research station needs a fleet of what look like invasion ships? Dr. Quinella's skin shifted from blue to a pale gray, which I was learning was the alien equivalent of going white as a sheet. You can see the hangar bay? I can see a lot of things, including the fact that you're really, really nervous about something, and it's not just because I drank your experiment. The tingling in my head was getting stronger, and with it came something else. Voices. Thoughts that weren't my own. I can also hear what you're thinking, and right now you're thinking that I've just stumbled onto something that's going to get us both killed. She stood up slowly, her forearms trembling slightly. Jake, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The serum you just consumed was designed to enhance psychic abilities and break down mental barriers. It's made from the blood of the vial, a species of natural telepaths who went extinct 3 centuries ago. What you're experiencing right now shouldn't be possible for a human. Great, I muttered, as more voices started filtering into my head. So I'm having an impossible psychic experience while looking at a secret weapons facility. This day just keeps getting better. That's when I heard it. Clear as day, coming from the direction of the command center. Commander Vel'tar's voice was echoing in my head. Not speaking, thinking. And what he was thinking about made my blood run cold. Phase 1 complete. Earth's defenses have been mapped. The human specimens have proven useful for intelligence gathering. Invasion fleet launches in 72 hours. I grabbed Dr. Quinella's arm, probably harder than I should have. We need to talk. Now. Because unless I'm hallucinating, which I really hope I am, your boss is planning to invade my planet. Her skin went from gray to a sickly green. You can hear Commander Vel'tar's thoughts? I can hear everyone's thoughts, including yours, and right now you're thinking that you've been working on this project under false pretenses. I was starting to pace now, the implications hitting me like a freight train. This whole research station is a front, isn't it? You weren't developing consciousness-expanding serum for scientific purposes. You were developing it as a weapon. Not a weapon, she said quietly. A tool for interrogation, for breaking down mental defenses. I thought it was for peaceful applications, enhanced communication between species, better understanding. Her voice was getting smaller with each word. I never meant for it to be used for invasion. The voices in my head were getting louder now, a constant stream of alien thoughts and conversations. And they all seemed to be centered around one topic, the upcoming invasion of Earth. My home, my planet, my species. I tried to focus on just one voice at a time, sorting through the mental chatter like tuning a radio. What I heard made me wish I'd never touched that vial. Human defenses are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours. The specimens we've observed show no signs of psychic abilities. Conquest should be complete within standard cycles. I sank into a chair, my head spinning from more than just the psychic overload. They're going to wipe us out, aren't they? Dr. Quinella nodded slowly. The Galactic Federation has been concerned about humanity's rapid technological advancement. There's been talk of preemptive action before you become a threat. So let me get this straight, I said, standing up again because sitting still was impossible. You've all been studying us, pretending to be our friends, while secretly planning to eliminate us because we might someday be dangerous? Not all of us, she said quickly. Many of us opposed the plan, but the Council of Elders decided that humanity's aggressive nature and rapid development made you too dangerous to ignore. I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop once I started. Aggressive nature. That's rich. You're literally planning genocide and we're the aggressive ones. That's when I tried to do something that, in retrospect, was probably the stupidest thing I could have done. I tried to warn the other humans on the station. I found Mike Rodriguez first. He was working in the engineering section, running diagnostics on the station's power systems. Good guy, been on the station for about 6 months longer than me. When I burst into his workspace babbling about telepathic serums and invasion fleets, he looked at me like I'd finally snapped. "Jake, buddy, you need to slow down." "What are you talking about?" "The aliens are planning to invade Earth. I can read their minds. Dr. Quinnell has been working on a psychic serum and I accidentally drank it, and now I can hear them all thinking about destroying our planet." Mike put down his tools and looked at me with the kind of expression you'd use on someone who'd just claimed they'd been abducted by Elvis. "Jake, when's the last time you got some sleep?" I tried explaining about the serum, about the voices, about the invasion fleet. But the more I talked, the more convinced Mike became that I was having some kind of breakdown. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. If someone had come up to me 12 hours ago with the same story, I'd have been calling for a psych evaluation too. I tried 2 more humans after Mike with similar results. By the time I finished with Lisa Chen from the communications department, I was starting to wonder if maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe the serum had just scrambled my brain, and I was hallucinating the whole thing. But then I heard Commander Vel'tar's voice again, echoing in my head with crystal clarity. 71 hours and 37 minutes until fleet departure. All preparations on schedule. And I realized that whether I was crazy or not, I was the only human who knew what was coming. Which meant I was the only one who could stop it. Being the only person who knows about an impending alien invasion is exactly as stressful as it sounds. Especially when that person is a janitor whose greatest achievement up until this point was successfully unclogging the station's most notorious toilet without causing a toxic waste incident. But here's the thing about being a janitor. You learn things, you see things, you go places that important people don't even know exist. And after 18 months of cleaning up after these aliens, I knew the Galactic Research Station Prometheus better than anyone else on board. I knew that the ventilation system connected to every room on the station. I knew which corridors were monitored and which ones weren't. I knew the maintenance schedules, the guard rotations, and exactly which systems were critical to the station's operation. What I didn't know was how to stop an invasion fleet with a mop and a rapidly fading psychic ability. The voices in my head were getting fainter now, like a radio station slowly losing signal. Whatever Dr. Quinnella's serum was doing to my brain, it was temporary. I could feel my enhanced abilities starting to fade, which meant I was running out of time in more ways than one. But I still had maybe 12 hours before the telepathic effects wore off completely. 12 hours to figure out how to save my entire species. No pressure. I started with what I knew best, sabotage disguised as routine maintenance. The beauty of being invisible to the aliens was that they never questioned what the human was doing. As long as I looked busy and stayed out of their way, I could go pretty much anywhere on the station without arousing suspicion. First stop, the communications array. If I could disrupt their ability to coordinate with the invasion fleet, maybe I could buy Earth some time. I grabbed my maintenance kit and headed for the comm center, whistling casually as I walked past 2 guards who didn't even glance in my direction. The communications system was protected by about 17 different security protocols, but it wasn't protected against a guy with a screwdriver and intimate knowledge of the station's power grid. I didn't need to hack their system. I just needed to cause an electrical surge that would look like a routine equipment failure. Routine maintenance. I announced to the technician on duty, a slug-like alien named Griex who always treated me like I was part of the furniture. Power coupling inspection. Griex didn't even look up from his console. Be quick about it, human. We have important communications to maintain. Oh, if only he knew how important. I spent about 20 minutes carefully rerouting some power cables and installing a tiny feedback loop that would cause the entire array to overload in exactly 6 hours. By the time they figured out what had happened, it would look like a routine equipment failure. The kind of thing that happens when you don't properly maintain your electronics. Next stop, the navigation computer. The invasion fleet would need precise coordinates to reach Earth, and those coordinates were stored in the station's central database. I couldn't delete them without someone noticing, but I could introduce some very subtle errors that would send the fleet to a completely different part of the galaxy. This one was trickier. The navigation computer was in a restricted area, and I needed a reason to be there. Fortunately, the cooling system for the computer core had been acting up lately, which meant I had legitimate maintenance work to do. I was elbow-deep in cooling pipes when I heard footsteps approaching. Commander Vel'tar's voice echoed down the corridor, and with my fading telepathic abilities, I caught fragments of his thoughts. Suspicious activity, human behavior, check maintenance logs. My heart started racing. Had someone figured out what I was doing? I quickly finished my work on the navigation computer, introducing what looked like a minor calibration error but would actually send any ships using these coordinates about 3,000 light-years off course. Human Commander Vel'tar's voice made me jump, and I nearly dropped my wrench. "What are you doing in this section?" I held up the cooling pipe I'd been working on, trying to look as bored and routine as possible. "Cooling system maintenance, sir. The temperature readings have been fluctuating, and Dr. Quinella requested priority repairs." For a moment he just stared at me with those cold, reptilian eyes. I could feel him probing, trying to read my thoughts, but whatever psychic defenses humans naturally had seemed to be holding. Either that, or the serum was still providing some kind of protection. "See that you complete your work quickly," he said finally. "We have important operations beginning soon." "Yes, sir," I replied, fighting the urge to add like the invasion of my home planet, "You scaly bastard." He walked away, but I could still hear his thoughts, fainter now but still audible. "Human seems nervous. Perhaps increased surveillance. Fleet departure in 68 hours. I was running out of time, and my abilities were fading fast. But I'd managed to disrupt their communications and navigation systems. Maybe that would be enough to give Earth a fighting chance. That's when I heard Dr. Quinella's voice, both out loud and in my head, calling my name from her laboratory. I found her pacing frantically, all four arms gesturing wildly as she muttered to herself. When she saw me, her eyes widened with something that looked like hope. "Jake, thank the ancestors you're here. I've been thinking about what you said about the invasion, about my research being used for conquest." She grabbed my arm with two of her hands. "I want to help. I want to stop this." "You do?" I asked, surprised. "Why?" "Because I became a scientist to help people, not to harm them. What the Federation is planning, it's wrong. It's genocide." Her skin shifted to a deep purple, which I was learning meant she was either angry or determined. "Besides, you're not the only one who can see what's really happening here. I've been putting the pieces together for months, and I don't like the picture they're forming. So what do you suggest we do about it?" She led me to a computer terminal and started pulling up schematics. "The invasion fleet is controlled by a central navigation system. If we can overload it, we can scatter the ships across the galaxy. They'll be lost, confused, and it will take them years to regroup." "I already messed with the navigation computer," I said. "Sent them coordinates that should put them about 3,000 light-years off course." Her eyes lit up. "Brilliant. But we need to do more. We need to completely overload the system, cause a cascade failure that will affect every ship simultaneously." "And how exactly do we do that?" She pointed to a schematic of the station's core. "The central computer is connected to every system on the station. If we can cause a massive overload in the right sequence, we can send a feedback pulse through the entire network. It will look like a catastrophic system failure." I studied the schematic, my janitor's knowledge of the station's layout filling in the gaps. "We'd need to access the core directly, and that's in the most heavily guarded section of the station." "Leave that to me," she said, pulling up what looked like duty rosters. "I can get you access, but Jake, you need to know something. The serum's effects are almost gone, aren't they?" I nodded. The voices in my head were barely whispers now, and my ability to see through walls had faded completely. "Once you lose the psychic enhancement, you'll be going in blind. No telepathic awareness, no enhanced perception. Just you, your knowledge of the station, and whatever luck you can manage. I looked at the schematic one more time, tracing the route from my current location to the core. It was doable, but it would require perfect timing and a lot of crawling through ventilation shafts. Well, I said, grabbing my maintenance kit, I've always said that luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. Let's go save the galaxy. You know what nobody tells you about being a hero? It involves a lot more crawling through air vents than you'd expect. And those vents are not as spacious as they make them look in movies. I've been squeezing through the station's ventilation system for the past hour, following a route that Dr. Quinella mapped out for me. And I'm starting to think that maybe I should have spent more time in the station's gym. But the beauty of being a janitor is that you know every maintenance tunnel, every service corridor, and every forgotten access point on the station. While the aliens built their security systems to keep out intruders, they never considered that the biggest threat might come from someone who was already inside, someone they'd been ignoring for months. Dr. Quinella's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. She'd created a maintenance emergency in the core's cooling system, which would require immediate attention. That gave me about 30 minutes to get inside, upload the virus she'd prepared, and get out before anyone noticed. The virus would look like a simple system diagnostic, but it would actually cause a cascade failure that would overload every navigation system connected to the station's network, including the entire invasion fleet. I could hear voices echoing through the vents above me, alien conversations about final preparations and departure schedules. My telepathic abilities were completely gone now, which meant I was back to being just a regular human with a mop and a dangerous plan. Fleet Command reports all vessels at 97% readiness, someone was saying. Departure in 42 hours. 42 hours. That was less time than I'd thought. I needed to move faster. I reached the access panel for the core chamber and carefully removed the grate. The room below was exactly as Dr. Quinella had described, a massive spherical chamber filled with crystalline computers that hummed with enough energy to power a small moon. And right in the center, the main terminal that controlled everything. The only problem was the two guards standing between me and that terminal. I waited, watching their patrol pattern through the grate. They were methodical, professional, and unfortunately for me, very thorough. There was no way I was getting past them with stealth alone. That's when I remembered something Dr. Quinella had mentioned. The core chamber's environmental systems were controlled by the same network I was trying to sabotage. And as the station's maintenance specialist, I had access to those systems. I pulled out my maintenance tablet and logged into the environmental controls. A few quick adjustments to the atmospheric processors, and the oxygen levels in the core chamber started to drop. Nothing dangerous, just enough to make the guards feel drowsy and inattentive. Within minutes, I could see them starting to sway slightly, their movements becoming less coordinated. One of them actually sat down, claiming he felt a bit dizzy. Must be the long shifts, the other guard muttered, but he was yawning as he said it. I gave it another 5 minutes, then carefully lowered myself through the access panel. The guards were now sitting with their backs against the wall, fighting to stay awake. I made my way to the central terminal, moving as quietly as possible. The terminal was more complex than anything I'd ever seen, covered in alien symbols and pulsing with data streams that looked like liquid light. But Dr. Quinella had prepared for this. She'd given me a small device that would interface with the system and upload her virus automatically. I plugged in the device and waited. The upload bar appeared on the screen, moving painfully slowly. 15%. 20%. The guards were starting to stir, and I could hear footsteps in the corridor outside. 30%. 40%. That's when the alarm started blaring. Intruder alert. Unauthorized access to core systems. All security teams to Central Command. One of the guards snapped awake, looking around in confusion. What's happening? Core breach, the other guard said, struggling to his feet. Someone's in the system. 50%. 60%. I crouched behind the terminal, hoping the guards would think the breach was coming from outside the chamber. But then I heard Commander Vel'tar's voice over the intercom, cold and furious. Find the human. Now. So much for stealth. 70%. 80%. The guards were moving toward the terminal now, their weapons drawn. I had maybe 30 seconds before they found me, and the upload was still running. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red. I could hear Dr. Quinella's voice over the intercom, calm and professional. Attention all personnel. We are experiencing a cascade failure in the primary power grid. All non-essential systems are being shut down to prevent core overload. Please remain calm and await further instructions. 90%. 95%. The guards were confused, trying to figure out if the power failure was related to the security breach. I used their momentary distraction to move to a different hiding spot, keeping the terminal between me and them. 100%. Upload complete. I quickly unplugged the device and slipped it into my maintenance kit. The virus was now in the system, spreading through the network like a digital plague. In a few hours, it would reach every navigation computer connected to the station. But first, I had to get out of here alive. The guards had figured out that someone was in the chamber with them, and they were systematically searching every possible hiding spot. I needed a distraction, something that would give me enough time to reach the access panel. I pulled out my sonic screwdriver. Not the cool science fiction kind, just a regular maintenance tool that happened to make a very loud, very annoying noise when used improperly. I set it to maximum volume and threw it across the chamber. The guards spun toward the sound, weapons raised. While they were distracted, I sprinted for the access panel, hauling myself up into the ventilation system just as the chamber door burst open and half a dozen security officers poured in. Spread out, Commander Vel'tar's voice echoed through the chamber. Find the human. But I was already gone, crawling through the vents as fast as I could manage. Behind me, I could hear the sounds of a station-wide search beginning. Every corridor, every room, every possible hiding spot would be checked. Good thing I knew a few places they'd never think to look. I made my way to the one spot on the station that no alien would ever willingly enter, the human waste processing facility. It was smelly, undignified, and absolutely perfect for laying low while Dr. Quinella's virus did its work. As I settled in to wait, I could hear the chaos beginning above me. Systems failing, computers crashing, and the sound of very confused aliens trying to figure out what was happening to their invasion fleet. 24 hours until the fleet was supposed to depart. 24 hours to find out if a janitor and a guilt-ridden scientist could save the galaxy. No pressure at all. You know what's funny about saving the galaxy? The moment when you realize it actually worked is never as dramatic as you'd expect. There's no swelling orchestral music, no slow-motion victory scene. Just the sound of very confused aliens trying to figure out why their invasion fleet is scattered across 17 different star systems. I spent the next 18 hours hiding in the waste processing facility, listening to the chaos unfold above me. The virus Dr. Quinella had created was a thing of beauty. It spread through the station's network like wildfire, corrupting navigation data, scrambling communication protocols, and generally turning the most advanced military operation in galactic history into a cosmic game of pin the tail on the donkey. The first sign that our plan was working came about 6 hours after the upload, when I heard Commander Vel'tar's voice over the intercom, no longer cold and controlled but rising to what could only be described as a panic. All fleet commanders, report your positions immediately. We are experiencing navigation anomalies across all vessels. Then came the responses, and each one was more beautiful than the last. Fleet Commander Zarthol reporting, we appear to be in the Andromeda Galaxy, requesting immediate navigation correction. Fleet Commander Vel Knox reporting, we are currently orbiting a star that is not on any of our charts. Recommend immediate course correction. Fleet Commander Zeftal reporting, we seem to be in what appears to be a parallel dimension. The stars are purple here. Please advise. I actually started laughing at that last one. A parallel dimension? Dr. Quinella's virus had somehow managed to scatter the invasion fleet not just across space, but across reality itself. That was either the most impressive computer program in history, or the luckiest system malfunction of all time. The best part was listening to the aliens try to figure out what had happened. They ran diagnostics, brought in experts, and even started accusing each other of sabotage. But nobody suspected the human janitor who'd been quietly mopping floors for the past 18 months. After about 12 hours of hiding, I decided it was safe to emerge. The station-wide search had been called off, and everyone was too busy trying to salvage their invasion plans to worry about finding one missing maintenance worker. I made my way back to Dr. Quinella's lab, where I found her staring at a computer screen with what I was learning to recognize as alien satisfaction. Her skin had shifted to a bright golden color, and all four of her arms were moving in what looked like a happy dance. "Jake," she exclaimed when she saw me. "It worked. Your virus has completely disrupted the invasion fleet. They're scattered across half the galaxy, and it will take them years to regroup." "My virus?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, technically it was my virus, but you're the one who uploaded it. And you're the one who figured out how to access the core in the first place." She pulled up a star chart on her screen, showing the current positions of the invasion fleet. "Look at this. Fleet Commander Zarthul is currently 3 million light-years from here. Fleet Commander Vel'tar is orbiting a black hole. And Fleet Commander Zeftal appears to be in a dimension where the laws of physics work differently." I studied the chart, shaking my head in amazement. How long will it take them to get back? At current technology levels, conservative estimate would be 15 to 20 years. And that's assuming they can even find their way back to this dimension. She paused the star chart and turned to face me with all four eyes. "Jake, you've essentially given Earth 2 decades to prepare for a potential future threat. That's more than enough time for your species to develop adequate defenses." That's when Commander Vel'tar burst through the lab doors, his scales practically vibrating with rage. Behind him were 6 security officers, all armed and looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Dr. Quinella," he hissed, his reptilian eyes scanning the room before settling on me. "We know the human was involved in the system breach. Surrender him immediately." I stepped forward, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "No need to surrender me, Commander. I'm right here." His head snapped toward me, and for a moment I thought he might actually breathe fire. "You, a maintenance worker. You destroyed the greatest military operation in galactic history." "Hey now," I said, crossing my arms. "I prefer to think of it as an unscheduled fleet reorganization. Very modern management technique." The sound that came from Commander Vel'tar's throat was somewhere between a roar and a death rattle. "You have committed an act of war against the Galactic Federation. You will be executed for treason." "Actually," Dr. Quinella interrupted, stepping between us. He committed an act of war against an illegal military operation that violated about 47 different Federation treaties. The invasion of Earth was never formally approved by the Council of Elders. It was a rogue operation." Commander Vel'tar's eyes widened. "You dare accuse me of—" "I dare accuse you of exactly what you did," she said, her skin shifting to a deep red that I was learning meant she was really, really angry. "You used my research for unauthorized military purposes. You planned genocide without Federation approval. And you lied to everyone on this station about our true mission." For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the computers and the sound of Commander Vel'tar's heavy breathing. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. "It doesn't matter," he said. "The fleet will regroup, Earth will fall. And this pathetic species will be eliminated as planned." "About that," I said, pulling out my maintenance tablet. "You might want to check your long-range communications array. I may have accidentally introduced a feedback loop into the system during routine maintenance yesterday. Should be overloading right about now." As if on cue, the lights flickered, and a series of explosions echoed through the station. The communications array had just suffered what would later be classified as a catastrophic equipment failure. "No communications, no navigation, no invasion fleet," I said, enjoying the look of absolute horror on Commander Vel'tar's face. Looks like you're going to have to find a new hobby, Scales. What happened next was probably the most satisfying moment of my entire life. Commander Vel'tar, the 7-foot-tall reptilian who'd spent months treating me like I was barely sentient, slowly turned to face me with something that looked suspiciously like respect. "How?" he asked quietly. "How what?" "What? How did a maintenance worker outmaneuver the most advanced military force in the galaxy?" I grinned and held up my mop. "Because while you were all looking up at the stars, planning your grand conquest, I was down here learning how everything actually works. You can have all the advanced technology in the universe, but somebody still has to clean the floors and maintain the systems. And after 18 months of being ignored, I knew this station better than anyone." Dr. Quinella stepped forward, her golden skin practically glowing with pride. "Commander Vel'tar, I believe it's time to reconsider humanity's status in the Federation. Any species capable of this level of strategic thinking deserves more than a maintenance classification." Commander Vel'tar looked around the room, taking in the failed invasion, the scattered fleet, and the human janitor who'd single-handedly derailed the greatest military operation in galactic history. Then he did something I never expected. He laughed. "You know what, human? You're right. Any species that can turn a janitor into a strategic genius deserves our respect." He turned to his security officers. "Stand down. New orders. Jake Martinez is hereby promoted to head of station operations." "Head of station operations?" I asked, not sure I'd heard correctly. "You wanted respect for your species? You've got it. But if you're going to be running operations on this station, you're going to need to learn how to do more than just clean floors." I looked around the room, taking in the faces of the aliens who'd spent months ignoring me, dismissing me, treating me like I was invisible. Now they were looking at me with something I'd never seen before, genuine respect. "Does this mean I get a better office?" I asked. "No. You get the commander's quarters," Commander Vel'tar said. "I'll be moving to more appropriate accommodations." Dr. Quinella moved to stand beside me, her forearms crossed in what I was learning was her version of a satisfied smile. "Jake, there's something else. I've been thinking about that serum you drank. If we could synthesize it properly, create a stable version that doesn't require extinct alien blood." "You want to make more telepathic humans?" "I want to make better communication possible between all species. Think about it, no more misunderstandings, no more conflicts based on miscommunication, no more invasions because nobody bothered to actually talk to each other." I thought about that for a moment, imagining a galaxy where humans and aliens could actually understand each other, where differences were resolved through conversation instead of conquest. "You know what, Doc? I think that sounds like a pretty good project for the new head of station operations." And that's how I went from being Jake Martinez, cosmic janitor, to Jake Martinez, diplomatic liaison and head of the most important research station in the galaxy. It turns out that sometimes the most ordinary people really can save the day. You just need the right combination of opportunity, determination, and a really good understanding of how the ventilation system works. 6 months later, I'm still on the station, but things are different now. The humans aren't just maintenance workers anymore. We're partners, colleagues, friends. Earth has been granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, and humanity is finally taking its place among the stars. Dr. Quinella and I have been working on that improved serum, and the early results are promising. We've already prevented 3 potential conflicts just by helping different species understand each other better. Commander Vel'tar, meanwhile, has been reassigned to a desk job on a mining station in the Outer Rim. Apparently, the Federation Council was less than pleased with his unauthorized invasion plans. But he sends me a message every few weeks, usually something along the lines of "Well played, human." Well played. Zeph got promoted to head of the lab, and he's doing great work with interspecies communication protocols. The guy still jumps at his own shadow. But he's brilliant, and now that he doesn't have to worry about invasion plans, he's actually pretty funny. As for me, I still carry a mop. Not because I have to anymore, but because it reminds me that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with advanced weapons or complex strategies. Sometimes they're fought with simple determination, a good understanding of how things work, and the willingness to do what's right even when nobody's watching. Plus, you never know when you might need to clean up a mess. And trust me, in a galaxy full of different species trying to learn how to live together, there are always messes to clean up. But that's okay. I've got a mop, I've got friends, and I've got a job that actually matters. Not bad for a guy who just wanted to pay his bills and maybe see the stars. And the best part? Earth is safe, the galaxy is a little bit more peaceful. And somewhere out there, Fleet Commander Vel'tar is probably still trying to figure out why the stars are purple in his dimension. Some problems, it turns out, are better left unsolved.